Hi there, how you doing? In the name of Christ, it's your girl, Garabo, Cran K. I hope you're good. So the tree, the tree, literally a tree, is currently functioning as a selfie stick, like a camera stand, right now, for a purpose. The branches that you're looking at over there are indeed to sort of kind of give the effect that I am behind some kind of a veil. I'm hidden in a jungle, a literal jungle, a bush, if you may. And so as a result, it's kind of hard for anyone to see me or my value or what I can offer. And so there is this like random tendency or propensity within people to anticipate or to imagine or reach the conclusion that I'm less valuable than I actually am. However, the woman in question, upon you removing the veil of the bush, the veil of this smoke screen, if you want to call it that, ultimately is unveiled as that girl. There is a lesson, basically, in that to be grasped, to be gauged, to be understood. Misinterpretation of who I am is utterly irresponsible and frankly quite offensive. And I've got to just put it out there, what exactly it is that's going on. So I'll just settle the camera down there and speak the rest of the message that I want to give. I apologize if there's a little bit of a delay in the back from the sun or whatever. Sorry. I'm trying to get my hair to hide the sun. Like, I don't know if you can tell that that's what I'm doing. So there's like less of a delay or whatever. Okay. It's not really working, is it? I don't want to cut anything out because it takes so much admin for me to do that. So I'm literally going to leave this in, and if at all you got bored, please just like fast track to the part where I'm getting to a point, or maybe I will edit it out. I don't know. Like, that's just the story of my random life. I'll put the Alice band there. I hope that that has helped with concealing some of the sun in the background. Alright, so let me just talk and get to the point. Women, right? Our thing in this world, what it is that we basically run on, is what our value is calculated based on. What our worth by this fleeting planet is often based on is our beauty, physically how we look, our age. So the younger we are, apparently the more worth anybody's while we are. That is the thing about women on earth. And if at all of those three things are not in a bunch, basically you're young and you're beautiful and you have a great body, you're gonna be miscalculated entirely as somebody that's not worth the while of some person that might rock up and take you up as a wife. Well, I've got some records to set straight about how things operate in the kingdom of heaven, so that nobody will ever again imagine me somebody that is scraps or leftover goods or a reject that nobody else wanted, and so I was done a favor or something by having somebody rock up in my space. I just have to put that out there because it's very heartbreaking as a woman to have everybody basically devalue you based on your life conditions and what happens around them, your extenuating circumstance. Sometimes some of the most invaluable and glorious women in the world grow up in countries that are frankly ridiculous. They don't know whether they're coming or going. It's a very heavily misogynistic climate, a very heavily chauvinistic climate. It is a very abusive environment for a woman to basically grow up in. So basically you become a victim of your circumstance, and it is unfortunate that that is the status quo for you. Therefore, if you want anything better for yourself as a woman, you kind of have to leave that country, or you're going to find yourself getting rejected, you're going to find yourself getting abandoned, you're going to find yourself getting pushed to the side, basically, by the men who expect you to settle no matter what, even though what they're asking is for you to basically accept abuse, oppression, and discomfort for the rest of your life. I'm gonna give you or tell you a story or two about North Korea. North Korea. I'm slightly uncomfortable with the lighting conditions here. I feel as if I'm not really getting joy out of them. So I'm going to stop recording and try and find somewhere where I can sit, where light is not going to be so bad, and then I'll come back. Hi, how's it? This is the quietest environment that I can ever be in to speak my mind while I'm also outside, capitalizing on natural lighting. In the room there, it's getting a little bit dark. It's like 4 p.m. The sun is already starting to dissipate. This is my car. Like, as you can see, everything is falling apart. Like, in it needs a major service. I told you it is functioning as a storage facility. It's super dirty. You can barely see outside of the windows. Everything is a mess in here, so do not be it's actually ideal that I should be in here, because my vehicle, I did say it's a storage facility, so you're going to be seeing bed linen and everything in the background. It doesn't matter. It's ideal that I should be speaking from inside my car, me as a woman, trying to put forward this point, because the context obviously does not suit the woman in it. Do you agree? The context, the environment, this place, this car, these dangling wires, the dirt off the windows, and the fact that it is operating as a storage facility. One should responsibly ask, if at all they are a responsible human being, what is a woman like this doing in an environment like that? And if a person does not ask those questions, they're flatly and plainly kind of exploitative, or even intentionally trying to disregard or disconnect from the fact that this is a misplaced person that needs some kind of restoration or justice, or something needs to be fixed, because there is obviously a misplacement of a person. So ideally, I'm in the car. I want to tell you a story about North Korea. I did already allude to that, so I'm just going to get straight into it. Not a story, but just a little bit of an attachment to my story with North Korea. So we know, as a global population, if at all you're into world news, if you watch the news, if you follow what's going on around the world, we know that North Korea is practically uninhabitable by citizens there. People cannot live freely in North Korea. There are human rights abuses literally at a scale where it is that the country has been so severely sanctioned that it now qualifies as a pariah state, basically a Lone Ranger state. It is no longer considered, in all intents and purposes of the word, as a global participant. It might as well be a country on Mars, the way that the rest of the world so has ostracized North Korea from everything and anything that can ever be a world event. Much like what happened with South Africa in the days of apartheid, but like worse, on steroids. Even what's going on in Russia right now is a pin drop in the ocean in comparison to the level of pariahness of North Korea. They've been really very severed because of the fact that it is so totalitarian, so controlling, and so careless for the citizens on the ground. It is so violating of human rights, and its leader is such a criminal against humanity that it would be wholeheartedly irresponsible and unacceptable, as well as insensitive of the world population, of the world global leadership, to let them continue as normal and participate as normal with global partners. So they've been ostracized. Their biggest support, frankly, is China. And that is only because China is, in and of itself, somewhat of a totalitarian. So they have some kind of alliance there. They have alliances, which is why it's so easy to connect into North Korea from China and vice versa versus Beijing. But North Korea, it is so bad, actually. Their partnership with China is so taxing on North Koreans that even when they try to defect, basically leave the country, China's the last place they can go. The safest place for a North Korean to defect is South Korea. And so you can understand just how bad the situation in North Korea is. I'm a South African citizen. When we get born, especially recently, there was a law that was passed that babies have to come out of, basically when they're born, they have to have an ID number registered from the hospital. When I was a kid, we had to get ID books eventually at some point in our lives. Usually we would run to do this at matric, like the last year of high school, grade 12, so we could write our matric exams. That's when we got our IDs. So automatic IDing of a baby did not happen in this country until some years ago, right? So everybody has an ID basically from birth. If you get born like in a hospital or somewhere, or at least shortly after the baby has been born, they get given an ID number. The moment, like, we no longer just have birth certificates, but we actually have an ID number from birth now, right? It was an improvement on the original system. And the reason why the government passed this law was because of the challenges that were faced by many people in the rural areas, many of the disenfranchised of this world, who would get to like 18, 19, 20 years of age without an ID. And without an ID, you can't write your final year of matric. Our matric exams in this country are grade 12 examinations, basically that which helps you exit high school, are national, or on a national level, whether you are in a private school or a private school, because universities use those standards in order to decide whether or not you have been accepted or not, right? So while examinations for kids from grade 8 to grade 11 can be independent in a school, the matric level or standard must be national, meaning therefore that kids getting educated in rural areas where they're really very far away from the home affairs, where they're really far away from anywhere where they can actually get an actual ID done, can find themselves missing out on matric exams, and so therefore thwart their futures. It is near on impossible to get a job in this country, in corporate South Africa, or anywhere at all. Basically, if you don't want to work as a domestic worker, if you don't want to work as a gardener, if you don't want to work as like a low income minimum wage person, you have got to at a minimum have a high school graduation. You have to have a certificate, matric. It's what they call like a grade 12 graduation, right? And these kids that were in the rural areas, you would find them getting to a point where they're now like 20-year-old women and men, or 25 or 30-year-olds, and they have no ID. And as a result of not having an ID, they cannot collect government checks. If at all they're in so much squalor that the government would pay them some kind of a stipend, they cannot collect a pension. If at all they qualify for a government pension, they cannot qualify for they cannot write their matric even if they want to finish school. So they finish only up to grade 11. They can't do anything. They are basically stranded. They're stuck. And the only time that they would likely even get an ID, a number, is if they got arrested, like they committed a crime. And in order for them to be processed through the system in this country, they have to have an ID number. So maybe the prison system might help them, but who in the world wants to go to prison first before they have some kind of an identification that enables them to do whatever? Many of these people, it is by mere virtue of circumstance that they can't get IDs. It's not because they don't want them. It is because they literally live like 10,000 kilometers away from the nearest Home Affairs. Home Affairs is tantamount of the Department of Homeland Security in the United States, the place where we get what would be the tantamount of social security numbers. Yeah, where we, like, anything that has to do with you as a human or a legal personality, we get that done through that department. It's our ID books, our babies' birth certificates, a registration of births, registration of deaths, things like those happen through the Home Affairs. But some places in this country are so uncatered to by the government that they don't even have running water, let alone Home Affairs. And some of them can't even get to it. They can't take transportation. They literally are born in villages, and that's it. And these are the people that then are left out altogether. They can't vote. Of course, if you don't have an ID book, you also can't vote. So you can't influence the decision of what happens in the country through the man or the woman that you bring into power. Things like those, right? South Africa therefore made a decision that children now from birth, as soon as like they walk into a hospital being sick, as soon as anything at all is registered by the government of the country, like in a hospital, at least it ought to happen. I believe the execution of it is lackluster, but the law is there that says that as soon as a person walks in to any official place or a government hospital and they don't have an ID number, the process has to be commenced to get this done for them. So hospitals are now working in tandem with like the Home Affairs and whatnot, that when a birth is registered by that hospital, an automatic generation of an ID number is given to a baby, so that every kid, when they go through the schooling system, will be automatically enabled to write matric. It would be in very rare circumstances where a kid never gets sick, never gets to a public hospital, never gets to a police station, never gets anywhere where it is that they get to matric. And like literally there's just like nothing going on. Like there's nothing in the system. It is one step in the right direction to try and help the disenfranchised, so you don't get a 25-year-old that doesn't have an ID book, an ID card, an ID number, so they can participate in the country's benefits, goods, ups and downs, economy, look for jobs and, successfully apply and all that jazz. Right? That is what South Africa does for its citizens. And even the previous system that was in place, where we had to go with our parents to the Home Affairs to get an ID to write matric, even that was pretty good, right? It was fair enough to make sure that every child born can one day be enabled to do what under heaven they need to do. if they want to go and do it. If you want to go and study at university, you've got an ID book, just like work really hard in high school, and if your results are great, they'll accept you and you will do what you want to do to make sure that everybody has equal opportunity and access to such the opportunities as well. That is what this country does. My nation is ridiculous, but it's got some things right. Do you understand? North Korea, on the other hand, the citizens there, things are so bad that births don't get registered, and so therefore deaths rarely ever get registered. Everybody there is just a number that can be tipped like a domino, and if it falls, like, really, who's gonna miss it? Rarely ever does anybody get arrested for crimes. Like, women endure domestic violence in the worst way at the hands of men, and it's something that is just acceptable. There is no recourse under the law to go and complain against somebody that has slapped you in the face. A husband that has beaten you to a pulp and you're basically about to be hospitalized. There aren't even enough hospitals to take care of them. Children as young as 4 or 5 years old are inducted into labor camps because it is a socialistic society, and so everybody has to play their part in order to eat. The in order to eat portion of which is not even really truly food, but these lackluster random throw at me's that they give to the citizens after they have worked like a ridiculous day. And it's not even enough food. Plus, on top of that, it's not nutrient dense. It's not nutrient heavy. So they tend to be very malnourished, fed. You will find in North Korea that they're like kids as they're growing up. If you were to compare them to world standards of kids' rates of growth, you will discover that a 13-year-old boy in North Korea will look about 6 or 7 years old because of malnourishment, malnutrition. Their cognitive development as well will be below world average standards because they're not getting in what is necessary. Education in North Korea, unless you were born in higher ranks, like in the elite of North Korea, your kids are going to be subjugated to the tantamount of what this country used to call Bantu education back in the day. So basically they teach the women and the men, the girls and the boys there, how to serve the socialistic government. You can forget about maths, you can forget about science, you can forget about engineering as a degree therefore. So those who do qualify to study at North Korean universities are people that were born already very wealthy. They were born rich, and so their parents were able to take them to school where they were able to learn math, science, like everything that you study normally. Like, you underestimate and you take for granted the studying of parallelograms, of geometry, trigonometry, and you be thinking actually in these streets that, I mean, whatever, you take it for granted. But in North Korea, it doesn't come automatically. So depending on what social class you're born into, the curriculum of the country is different. In our country, in South Africa, the curriculum of children, insofar as they're in a government school, is exactly the same from grade 0 to matric, irrespective of where it is that these kids are getting the education. It's in the Kasi, it's in the ghetto, it's in the rural areas. It's the exact same curriculum, and that is how we're able to write the same matric exams. The same is also true of a private school. The standard of private school education might be slightly higher than that of government schools, but it's more or less the same thing. We qualify for the same universities. Private schools sometimes also enable kids to write things like SAT, so they can study in different countries and what have you. If you do want to go and study in a different country, you're going to have to deliberately seek out the services of a private school type education in this country. So after your matric, you can study in the US, you can study blah, 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 etc. You get my point. That is how the education system of this country operates. We don't have the best education standards in the world in terms of the quality of graduates, because our pass percentage keeps on like creeping down like a girl's skirt up her thighs when it's too short, but it keeps on creeping down. Like, you don't pass at 50% in this country. I think it's ridiculous, like somewhere in 30 or 35% or whatever. We've got those as challenges where it is that the standard of our education is slumping because the government is accommodating kids that are lazy by enabling them to pass their grades with like 30% or something. It's just really bad. But in terms of the quality of the actual information that we get fed, if a kid is really serious, they can get like super knowledgeable. They can get real clever. Like, I'm clever because I paid attention. You know what I mean? They can get really knowledgeable. The issue is in the government's standards for what it is that it requires a pass rate in this country. But in North Korea, the kids have to, like, women must be taught how to like plant and work railway tracks. Like, whatever education they get is very rudimentary. Yes, they do learn 1 + 1 = 2. They do also learn ABC all the way up until Z, but that's literally just about it. Following which they then taught hard labor. Unless your mom is really close to Kim Jong-un's like a government official whatnot type thing, unless your dad owns one of the hotels in Pyongyang, then you can like totally completely dream on about getting a university education. Many of the kids that are able even to get university education in North Korea that are wealthy are the only ones that can fly out of North Korea and say, for instance, study in like, I don't know, Seoul in South Korea, like stuff like that. So it depends on who you are. You therefore are a victim of your circumstance. If you're born lackluster, lowly, if you're not super duper close to Kim Jong-un, you're in trouble. Again, being super duper close to Kim Jong-un in and of itself can be dangerous. So you have to find, they compare him in North Korea to the sun. Like if you get too close to him, you could get burned. You could just get killed randomly. You know how he killed some of his family members? But if you get too far, you will freeze to death, hypothermia. So it depends on how close you are to Kim Jong-un, what the quality of your life might be. And those that have found that sweet spot are able to roam around more or less freely in North Korea, but not nearly as freely as they could if they got literally just next door to China. And China's already quite restrictive, it's draconian, but it's a walk in the park in comparison to North Korea. That is North Korea for you, right? So in terms of education, never mind education, but just in terms of citizenship in North Korea, you are a North Korean citizen just because you were born there. That's it. Like, don't nobody know that you actually are a citizen. There is no government census or anything, no record keeping central system like our home affairs system or the American social security system that basically says this is Karabo Sizagele Songwani. She was born in 1984 on the 8th of August, and we know she's around. She has not yet been declared dead. There's no death certificate for her, so we can trust that if we were to look for her, we will find her somewhere in the country. There's nothing of that nature. So they don't have documentation, basically. They don't have papers. They don't have an ID. Try, for the life of you, to go outside of your country without an ID. Try and travel to another country. I mean, goodness gracious, if you try and get an airplane, like if you take any flight at all in a country, whether it's local or international, you do need to have your ID and everything. Never mind ID passport if you're going to be traveling internationally. The only way that you can travel up and down everywhere you want to go without having to produce ID is within a very local context, like a taxi or a bus to go to school or whatever. You don't have to produce identification. That is the only literal way that North Koreans can get from A to B, and even then not too far. They don't have identification books that are by world standards acceptable anywhere else, meaning they can't get out of their country. They literally cannot get out of their country. They are jailed. They are imprisoned there. Now tell me of any country that happily receives an illegal immigrant that does not have papers. Do they not just get easily deported? Well, China has been famous for deporting North Korean defectors. And if you dare defect from North Korea and get brought back, it's over. You will get killed. Or you will spend the rest of your life in some prison where you're barely fed, and you will then end up dying a suicide death, because who in the world survives these life conditions? Everybody in North Korea is a prisoner. Unless they are, like I said, decently close to Kim Jong-un and also have a decent level of societal influence. Everybody, every citizen on the ground, nobody has an ID book. So nobody can even write the Tanamon of a matric. Nobody can write the Tanamon of an SAT so they can go and study at an abroad university. So basically, North Korean kids don't have dreams. They don't have dreams. They do not have dreams, even in the slightest. They can't say, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor. They can't, like a child born in this country, in the rural areas, living in shacks, it's very hard to get water. You have to walk like 5 kilometers just to the next river, and even then the water might give you cholera. Like a child living in those conditions in this country can successfully dream and say, one day I want to get out of this and not be a victim of my circumstance. I'm going to work really hard to get a scholarship through Wits University, and I am going to be an accountant, and I'm going to get my family out from the rural areas. It is possible for a child of that nature to dream in this country. But in North Korea, nobody dreams. Nobody dreams. Because what is that? They're literally made to live in a dome, an encircled, enclosed environment where they cannot aspire to be anything but a social servant that must do your part in order to eat bare minimum and keep yourself in a really super neat bunch if you don't want to find yourself in a prison camp, in a labor camp, if you don't want to find yourself living uncomfortably. So everybody just has to basically be this like worshiper of Kim Jong-un and the regime there. Kim Il-soo, Il-soo, whatever might be the conglomerate of names of these like the self-made deities in North Korea. That is what is going on there. Right? So the glory of the people on the ground, their intelligence, whatever it is that they have been given by God as a suite of gifting and talentedness is of no essence. It doesn't matter. Now imagine having IQ genius like Einstein. Imagine having the level of innovative ingenuity that, for instance, who is this guy that passed away, the Apple guy, Steve Jobs. Imagine having that level of technical ingenuity that Steve Jobs had and not be able to come up with the company that will be Apple, and not being able to explore what your brain can do because of where it is that you have been born. The skills, the talents, the giftedness, the suite of everythingness that individual citizens on the ground in North Korea basically are born with are to be thrown out into the furnace and burned, because who cares? That is the level of disquiet and misfortune, really, that dwells in my bones pertaining to North Korea. Ever since I started looking at them closely, because sitting in this position has made me just check out random things. My heart has been so severely burdened. I've always known that North Korea was an abuser, number one in the world, frankly, of Christians. It's actually been defied by Afghanistan, not because North Korea got better, but because Afghanistan got worse since Joe Biden pulled out of Afghanistan. So things have gotten real bad for Afghani people, period, including Christian persecution has also gone on the increase. But North Korea was historically held, up until just a few months ago, number one spot for the most persecuting country of Christians, followed closely now, followed by, I believe, like, well, like Iran and China were like real bad, but Afghanistan went and drained them, like knocked them off the number one spot because of what it is that the Taliban has gained freedom to do there ever since Joe Biden's irresponsible pulling out of the area, the region. Cool. So that is just like how, because of how badly persecuting of the church North Korea is, I started to then kind of check out what's going on there generally, and I realized that the reason why the church in North Korea is as badly persecuted as it is because of all the other oppressions in North Korea. Like, if you look at countries that persecute Christians, that have like a problem, a challenge with Christian persecution, they tend to have like really very compromised governmental structures, period, and are generally very unforgiving of human rights. They are generally very disregarding of human rights in total. So if you find a nation that persecutes Christians, you will likely find a nation that doesn't care about people's freedoms of expression. You will find a nation that does not care about people's right to life. Like, they just kill easily. They imprison over the most lackluster reasons, like you're not wearing your skirt the right way, or you're a woman daring to go and get educated. Countries that persecute Christians tend to have generally very draconian laws in other regards. So they are inappropriate, period, in terms of human rights. And so my prayers for North Korea have been along the lines of, God, free the North Korean people, period. Give them leg room so that everything can thrive there, including Christianity. A very generalistic prayer. I mean, think about Iran. Look at many of the countries in the Middle East that persecute Christians. It's not just Christians that are having a hard time there. It's women, it's children, it's men who are having their daughters just taken away from them by people who just want to marry them off. Like, everybody there is having a hard time. Everybody there is having a hard time. So you fix the rottenness in the government, and you help Christians thrive also. You cannot conquer one human right violation without dealing with another human right violation alongside it. So I keep taking prayers to God along the lines of, free the North Korean people, like, period. Free the country from Kim Jong-un, from the North Korean regime, the Kim Il-sung regime. Like, set them free from that, and Christians will automatically be among those liberated. So basically, we need to pray for like the whole country to just come out of the darkness. And there is no doing that without uprooting the one okie. But anyway, let me get back to the point then. Since North Koreans do not have leg room to do anything, and so their kids can't even dream of futures, it means that if you do defect from North Korea, you are basically in a lot of trouble. If you get found in whatever country you defected to, you will be like a Mexican found in the US without papers. You're 5 seconds away from being deported, or if you are a friend of Kamala Harris, you might just disregard all that altogether. You are an illegal alien that has to keep on running from the police. You could be a person that is generally a law-abiding citizen, but your country made it impossible for you to literally eat, move, do anything at all. So when you run to another country, you're essentially a refugee. You should be able to successfully find asylum. And North Koreans have nowhere to find true asylum in the world other than South Korea. The easiest place to get to from North Korea is China. South Korea is not even that easy, but South Korea has made it possible for North Korean defectors. There are even people whose sole job in South Korea is to help people defect from North Korea. South Korea has made it possible for North Korean defectors to be acceptable across the world. They don't get trained properly. They don't get educated properly. They don't get mathematical lessons properly. They don't get English lessons properly. They don't get basically how to live in a common society. Like, understand, North Korea is so bad. Like, Kim Jong-un could not give a rat's behind so much about his own citizens, right? That there's no service delivery. In South Africa, we call it service delivery. Like, everybody's always protesting about why it is that there's power cuts all the time. Why it is that the water's not arriving. Why it is that it's like this, that. Like, why are there no plumbing lines in the rural areas? That's service delivery. And so if there's a protest of a service delivery, it basically speaks about responsibilities that the government is supposed to be walking in, and they're just not getting around to doing it fast enough, right? There is no service delivery at all. Like, North Korean people would find our issues, you know, like when you feel like you're a cry baby, when you encounter another person's problems and you've been crying over your own problems, and then you find another person's issues and you start to feel like you're a cry baby, like you're basically spoiled. Yeah, well, South Africans would feel like spoiled brats if at all they were to see what's going on in North Korea. Like, we're always rioting, picketing, doing, complaining, crying, service delivery, power cuts. We are always crying about power cuts in this country. Like, it's a really ridiculous situation, the whole load shedding circumstance. Now, if you were to understand the situation in North Korea, you would be grateful for the fact that you got power for most of the day, sometimes even a couple of days in a week without there being a single power cut. Because in North Korea, there isn't even electrical infrastructure built in the grander majority of the country. The only place that has any real perpetual supply of electricity is Pyongyang, which is the capital of North Korea. And those that have a little bit more money than the next man have to use some kind of generator power in their houses, and even then it glows with a small little glimmer. So depending on what kind of generator you have, you might have that small little glimmering glow for like 5 minutes in the night so you can eat your dinner real quick. And even then, everybody there has to basically go to sleep when the sun sets. In South Africa, in winter, where I'm at right now, the sun sets at around 6:30, going on 7 p.m. In summer, it's about 7:30, going maybe even on 8 if you're in Cape Town. Imagine being forced to go to bed at like 7 p.m. at night, every day. Every single day. I mean, there is no sitting up and staying awake to watch something on Netflix. I mean, those are the comforts that we have that we underestimate and that we take for granted here in this country and everywhere else where such things are provided for the citizens on the ground. Well, in North Korea, there is no electricity, rarely any coming through, even those that can purchase those generators. And there's only one, well, not only one city, but predominantly one city. Wherever else it is that Kim Jong-un travels, they provide electricity there too, like in his various resorts where he goes to go and meet his like pleasure squad, like girls type setup thing. That is what's going on. It is so bad in North Korea in terms of the power supply, the service delivery of electricity there, that from out of space, like literally from out of space at night in that region, you know how satellite photography can give images of the earth and you see like it's all bright and glowing across like the various countries. From outer space you can see that it's nighttime and everybody's lights are on, street lights are on. Literally from outer space you see the lights on earth. North Korea from outer space. I challenge you to actually go Google it. In fact, you know what, I will put it somewhere here in a video where it is that the United Nations, when North Korea was saying, no, we don't do anything of that nature, come on, the United Nations provided them an image from outer space of their nighttime sky and was like literally the only place where there is like a spot or a glimmer of light is where Pyongyang is at. And Kim Jong-un is like, no, there's totally electricity in my country. What are you talking about? And the United Nations was like, but this is what we see from outer space. Are you telling us that we manufactured these facts, these details? Are you telling me that we went out of our way to manipulate the footage from outer space to make your country look like it only has one little glowing thing? You will find China on the left of it, South Korea on the right, and Japan, all these other surrounding nations like around North Korea, and they will all be lit, like lit. Do you understand? And North Korea is just this dark spot, this dark unlit joint with just what do you call this, one little glimmer of light popping out from outer space, and that glimmer of light is the capital Pyongyang, pretty much where it is that Kim Jong-un lives. The capital city and also the tourist hub of the country where people go, the only place that tourists can go, because everybody there gets a tour guide, because Kim Jong-un is very pedantic and particular about what people see in North Korea, because he's trying to create a false understanding of what's actually going on in his country. Everybody knows it's an oppressive regime, but he's trying to make it look like it's better than that. And so tourists, if at all they want to visit North Korea, can only go to Pyongyang. Well, among the allowable environments to visit, Pyongyang is that joint, and it's the only one that is lit at night with 24-hour supply of electricity, and even then not all parts of Pyongyang. That is the situation in North Korea. Everybody there is in utter darkness. Their winters are apparently ridiculous, and there is no ability for them to provide themselves heat in the winter other than by burning wood or whatever, you know, old school methods, which can also be dangerous. Carbon monoxide inhalation gases, like, it's bad. It's really super duper bad, and it's easy for a person to get arrested there. Those are the living conditions of North Koreans. If you dare even lament once about them, you could find yourself in a prison camp. Can't speak badly about Kim Jong-un, even in a drunken stupor or a dream. You like literally speaking in your sleep. You cannot make that Freudian slip at all about Kim Jong-un, because then you're going to find yourself imprisoned with no trial, with not even an understanding as to when you're going to get out of prison. Like, they don't have court systems for justice to do stuff like that, where a person goes through a fair trial, blah, blah, and then you do your time. There's no bailing out anybody out of prison. None of that. That is North Korea for you. Therefore, what does a beautiful woman do in North Korea? If I tell you, North Korea, like pretty much all Asian countries, produces some of the most gorgeous women in the world. Like, you will be out of your mind shocked even at their age when they tell it to you, because they don't age. They've got melanin like black people, Asians. And so they also have got staying power when it comes to aging. But when there are foods as well that they eat that make sure that they just like look 22 at like 42, right? So their women are like ridiculous. This perfect skin that's just popping barely any acne, blah, blah. They make them really beautiful. Like, I will actually, again, if I can recall, Lord God Almighty, please remind me, link a chick here from North Korea, one of the many defectors that I watch from North Korea. I want you to see that woman's beauty, and I'm going to put one of her videos, if I can link it. Otherwise, I'll put like her link in the description box below to her channel, so you can go and check her out and listen to the ridiculous stories of what happens there in North Korea. That is the level of beauty that you find of girls and women in North Korea. Like, she is gorgeous, like violently, and there would not have been anybody under heaven to come to that general understanding and recognition if she did not defect. If she did not defect. They can't get education properly. They don't have ID books. And there's only one place in the world where they can defect, where they're not going to take them away for being illegal immigrants, where they're not going to chase them away for not having papers, because they understand what's going on. So basically, South Korea is a place that everybody in North Korea that is trying to defect must go to. If at all they're going to be global citizens that are responsible with passports and ID books and blah, blah, they have to go to South Korea. And now, also another thing, defection out of North Korea is practically impossible. It's almost impossible. The country is literally encircled by barbed wire electric fencing to prevent people from defecting. So if you don't get busted running out of the country, you will likely die trying to get out of the country. They also have got people in, like some of them are women, in the ocean, like little boats, ships that are there whose primary mission or job is to shoot at people trying to swim to China or South Korea or whatever, like in order to run away, to defect. If they find you in the water, there is permission for them to not so much try and get you, but to shoot you. Like, they've got snipers on a boat, and the main job of this person is to identify anyone trying to flee the country. They could be totally innocent citizens, and just boom, kill them in the water right there. So defection from North Korea is just, like I said, a near on impossibility. And those who successfully do it have got to do it via people inside North Korea who are like spies or something, like people who are Trojan horses. Like, they work for the prison system. They're guards there. They look like regular, like, you know, an official of Kim Jong-un, or they work with like China, you know, like a sophisticated underground rescue network. That's how people defect from North Korea. They get defected through people who, if they got caught in and of themselves, their heads are chopped off. There is, in any country at all where there is that level of oppression, there will always be a revolutionary group that rises up. And so North Korean defectors only prosper to defect because of revolutionary groups. They have to save up money and pay these people to get them out, or some of them do them just because it's like Good Samaritan work. There's a man on YouTube whose job basically is to help North Korean people defect, and it's a dangerous job. He has to, in and of himself, meet them at a place where he's going to prosper to take them out that is inside North Korea. If he got caught there, he's a dead man. That is the only way that they defect. There is this one guy with a testimony where he defected from prison by running with his friend, and his friend is the one that first went for the barbed wire that is electric, and he got executed too is the right word, but electrocuted. And this guy used the electric charge that was being absorbed by his friend's body as basically a bridge to climb over his friend's body and escape. His friend was the first one to catch the charge, and it was all going in him. And he basically used his friend as an insulator and left his friend dying there. And he said that he felt really bad and guilty for that. But it's that bad in North Korea, where literally just to get out, you will even watch your friend getting electrocuted, your own mother, your sister, just so you alone can get out. It's that bad. That guy escaped from a prison in North Korea that he was supposed to be in forever. But other people escaped from homes, and they're just like, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. There are people who try also to exploit, especially the women, because like I said, they have some of the most beautiful women in the world. They try to help them defect in order to sell them into prostitution rings in Beijing. That's what China does to North Korean defectors, especially when they're women. So China's the worst place to go if you're a North Korean defector. The women who find themselves in China have to reduce themselves to like little sex toys, little kittens. You know, there's like this fetish across the world of Asian women. And so they have to get on the phone and speak dirty to men that across the world will then give them a couple of dollars or whatever. Those are the only kinds of people within the country that is China that are happy to help these women. They're like, well, I mean, you're still beautiful. You've got something to go down. There is a market for Asian beauty within the porn industry, so come through. So they end up doing work like that. Those are the challenges that North Koreans face when they try to defect. So the only place that is safe for North Koreans to go when they want to defect is South Korea. When they get to South Korea, they get put through some kind of civilization school. Remember, they live in a country that has no electricity, that has no internet, that has basically what it is to grow up in modern 21st century society. If you have been living in the 18th century and suddenly by time machine find yourself in downtown Joburg during peak season, peak hour, you will be flustered by all the lights, you will be flustered by all the honking like cars, the hoots, you will be flustered by the bustling human traffic. You will be flustered by literally too much noise and light and freedom and people doing what they want, talking what they want to do, their laughter. It is just going to overwhelm you. And so North Koreans, when they get out of South Korea, have to be put in some kind of a dome, a safe house, to gently wean them out. It's not wean them, let me rather say introduce them to life like that. Like, it's normal to have this much light in a city. It's normal to have electricity 24 hours a day in your house. It's normal to see people laughing and like walking around freely. It's also normal to speak badly about the politician in your country because you don't approve of what they're doing. It's called freedom of expression. It's normal to wear your hair a particular way, to wear makeup, to wear lipstick. It is okay. You can do that. And it takes some time, and they have to be trained through the school. In South Korea. And this school not only teaches them how to be civilized or live in a bustling 21st century type environment, like that's the level of oppression in North Korea. It teaches them civilization, and it also gets them it also gets them registered as world citizens. Basically, they become South Korean citizens with South Korean ID books and South Korean ID numbers. And so from South Korea, they can then make a decision if they want to go to the US or Brazil or wherever it is that they can. They are enabled now to like, apply for a passport if you want to travel internationally. They can now apply for entry into universities if they can just study up to matric and then try and see if they want to go to university. That's when North Koreans then are discovered as, my goodness, you have a genius IQ. Like, you literally grab a girl that defected at the age of 15, starting normal school only at that age, and then at 25, 10 years later, she's gone through high school, and that's when she matriculates or she gets her high school certificate. And then the girl goes and studies like biochemistry at like the best university in the country, like Seoul University type thing. It's like, you had the potential to be a biochemist, and yet you were going to be stranded in a country that was going to force you to work in a labor camp for the rest of your life. Nobody would have known that you've got those kinds of brains. Nobody would have known that you've got that level of talent, that skill, all that giftedness. Now, what do you think God feels about that? In the parable of the talents, it is written in God's word that the Lord resents the slothful servant that does not use his talent but buries it in the ground and gives it rather to the person who made 5 more talents. That is how God feels about people not using the skills. But what then happens when people can't use them? What happens when people have a desire to actually use all the giftedness that Jesus gave them, but they can't because of an oppressor? The Lord is going to squash that person like they're a fly underneath his thumb. The Lord is going to liberate those people. The Lord is going to do away with those who decide to grab all the glory inside the people that he has created and said, you're not going to use it. We are all to be stewards of God's gifts. But if we can't because of our country's circumstances, the Lord is in the business of humiliating an entire country just to set people free. Think about what he did with the Hebrews in the days of Moses. He literally decimated all of Egypt to set his people free so they can go and do what the Jews have done all along. They are among the most prosperous people in the world. If you live anywhere at all where there is a Jewish community, their businesses are always thriving. They're booming. They're literally powerhouses. And in Hitler's concentration camps, they couldn't do that. In Pharaoh's tantamount of slavery concentration camp conditions, they could not run the successful, fruitful businesses that they could, because they were told, you will only grind flour, you will only build a pyramid, but you will never be able to calculate the breadth, the depth, the height of a cube. And so therefore figure out what needs to be done in a submarine underground that has got cubular type structures to build it. If my people cannot do what I have given them intellectually and academically to do, then I'm going to squash anyone at all under heaven that tries to take away the building power or the creating power, the innovating power, the transformation, paradigm shifting, thought leading power that I've instilled inside my sons and daughters. You literally, if you're going to take that away, I'm going to take you away like a tsunami, and your destruction is going to be sudden. Your destruction is going to be sudden. People who are always trying to prevent God's creation from doing what God's creation is supposed to do always find themselves humiliated. I mean, look at what happened even with Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel was the biggest and baddest dude in the game when it came to his job. So much so that the king loved him more than all the other people, and they set him up for failure. Darius felt sorrowful that he was losing such a good skill, but because of his own decree, he let Daniel be in the lion's den, hoped that Daniel's God will rescue him. And indeed, Daniel's God did such a thing as that, closed the mouths of the lions. And then King Darius was able to say, how dare you take my best employee? You now go be thrown in the same den of demons, den of lions that Daniel did not get consumed by. And let's see if your fake God, if your fake statue is going to rescue you. And indeed, they got consumed with their families, the satraps and the administrators, by the lions, whereas Daniel survived it. The Lord is in the business of taking satraps and administrators and throwing them into squalor, obscurity, decimation, and obliteration, and then setting free those that were supposed to do a thing in the first place. So to stand in the way of the gifts of an entire nation is to make out of yourself somewhat of a satrap and somewhat of an administrator in the days of Daniel, trying to take the best guy for the job out of the job so you can look good in all of your mediocrity. North Korea, I mean, we all know that Asians are smart. Only look at around the world what's going on with China. Their whole economy is thriving and blossoming the way that it is right now, despite all of the draconian totalitarian control of Xi Jinping guy, right? Irrespective of all of that, China has become a world superpower because it's got these big, fat, chunky brains. Now, if genetics has anything to do with it, the level of prosperity in China and in other countries like that, South Korea, Japan, is because of the ingenuity of those people groups. Meaning that North Koreans could essentially create a superpower out of their own country, if at all they were given an opportunity to do so. Because they've got Chinese genes, they've got Japanese genes, they are in the same genetic type pool. They are the same people, just different nationalities. And so therefore, to thwart all of that intelligence, all of that wisdom, all of that creativity, because they are so creative. They are a powerhouse. We know. Won't come on to be buying everything from China, guys. They take everything over. They are successful in just about everything they do. So therefore, they have got Koreans, the level of industrial prowess, basically, as China. But they just can't burp it out fast enough just yet. They can't talk about it yet. They can't yawn and out comes a beautiful equation out of their evaporation from the yawning. They can't. Not because they don't wanna, but because they've been restricted by some okie that is just like a totalitarian, and he also insists on worship. There is this giant statue in Pyongyang of, I believe, Kim Jong-un or the original founders, like Kim Il-sung or whatever. And people have got to bow down to it the way that you would worship a god. Idolatry. A nation that is persecuting the true church of the Lord Jesus Christ. And on top of that, it desires that the statue of Nebuchadnezzar be worshipped by everybody on the ground. So everybody that doesn't do that is Daniel in the lion's den. Everybody that does not do that is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire. Is the Lord not going to rescue, protect Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? And then the soldiers around the fire will be the ones that get consumed by increasing the heat out here in these streets? Indeed, the Lord will rescue a people if at all the gospel of peace would get proliferated among them if they were enabled to successfully, without fear of abuse, respond appropriately to the gospel. Many of these countries that persecute Christians, a lot of the reason why the Christianity in there is either dwindling or struggling to grow is because of fear. But the Lord knows how to rescue the righteous for himself. And God knows, he says, my sheep hear my voice and I lead them out. And so if God wants to rescue a people because he sees that their hearts would soften towards him, if at all they were given an opportunity to successfully run in that country as Christians, he will then take the structures that are preventing his people from responding appropriately to the gospel. North Koreans are unable right now to successfully turn their lives over to Jesus without fearing that they might find themselves in a prison camp with no food, facing suicide, like Karabo. However, if the Lord removed those structures, who knows what kind of revival could happen in North Korea. So the first thing that needs to be sought after by the Christian church for North Korea is for the generalistic liberation of North Korea as a country. And then we'll see just how Christianity does on that day. We'll then see just how well Christians thrive in that day. If a person can, without fear of abuse and retaliation, preach the gospel and also respond appropriately to the gospel by saying, hallelujah, I receive the Holy Spirit, the redemption of the Lord. If a person can do that, and they do, therefore, God will rescue them. But if, stubborn nations, stubborn countries like South Africa, a person can respond to the gospel, but chooses not to, a person can respond to the gospel without persecution or abuse. But they can't. They don't, sorry, because they're scared of what's going to happen to them. On that day, that nation is under judgment. Anybody at all there should dust their feet off and get the stepping out of there. The Lord will judge that country. It'll be a better day on the day of judgment for Sodom and Gomorrah and for Sidon and Tyre than for that country, because they heard the gospel and did not respond. If a nation has got the level of liberties that South Africa does, for instance, to practice whatever religion you want to practice, and the people on the ground get given the gospel as freely as they desire, and nobody gives them grief, street evangelists don't face getting imprisoned, literally arrested right there from Stanton Mall where they are preaching. If that doesn't happen in the country, and the citizens on the ground still are rebellious and don't respond appropriately to the gospel, and they also insist on low-key persecuting the street evangelist, my goodness, the Lord is going to make Christians dust their feet off that country and then go on right ahead and liberate North Korea so that North Korea can be given the glory of God as opposed to South Africa. It is just like what happens in Romans 11, where God says that the people who are not my people, I will call my people. And the people that I was not their God, they will call me their God. But you will be jealous of them, Israel. The Gentiles, you will be jealous of them in the future because they will embrace the Messiah, whereas you will have rejected the Messiah. But because of the glory of the things that I'm going to be doing in them, you will see that God is with them. And so therefore the God that was originally yours was given to them. And then because of your envy or jealousy of those people, that's what's going to turn you right back to me, the apple of my eye. But that's going to happen in Jacob's trouble. And a remnant before Jacob's trouble of you will respond to the gospel appropriately. But for the better part, like Orthodox Jews will reject the Messiah until the tribulation. The mass clump of them that repent are in the tribulation. Only a remnant is currently getting saved in the church dispensation. So similarly too, the same concept, since God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, he will do that very same thing with nations that are presently persecuting Christians low-key under wraps, not making it look like Christian persecution, but the gospel is freely preached there, and people can say hallelujah Jesus on the street without having somebody like come out of nowhere and arrest them. You must understand that countries like those, like the US, like South Africa, who have some kind of freedom, and yet still give God the middle finger, you're gonna have, like Israel, your God taken away from you, and the people of God will then be those that never used to call him God. I've been given a violent burden for North Korea, precisely because I realize that South Africa is a waste of my jolly time. If at all North Koreans were to prosperously be freed from Kim Jong-un, by the Christian church will come together to liberate the nation through prayer, period, from all of its human rights embarrassments. So basically the uprooting of Kim Jong-un, the church there will thrive, and we will then see just what in the world a North Korean citizen will do when they don't have fear of prison if they embrace the gospel. Fear of prison if they embrace the gospel, and if they respond more appropriately to the gospel that is being preached, much like Nineveh did with Jonah, the Lord will then take himself away from you, South Africa, and give himself rather to all of the country that is North Korea. That is what I'm trying to help you understand. Do not come here and underestimate who I am or what I'm about to do and call me a reject. I just so happen to be just like a North Korean woman. Don't nobody out here in my own country recognize my value, my worth, and my everythingness, because they're dumb and they're under a leader that is proliferating nonsense. And insofar as they're close enough to that leader, but not too close, they will then be enabled. I'm basically lamenting against the middle class of South Africa. You are literally like the butt kissers of Kim Jong-un's regime. That is what South Africa is like. This country, the middle class in it, is like the butt kissers of Kim Jong-un in North Korea. People that don't care that a whole chunk of the country is disenfranchised. A whole chunk of the country don't have ID books. A whole chunk of the country can't move to other countries. A whole chunk of the country can't study. A whole chunk of the country cannot show just what they can do with their brains and their talents. Not because they don't want to do it, but because literally the country is making it impossible for them to do it. And the middle class of this country, that's not so close to the president that they could burn, but also not so far that they will freeze to death. They're just watching everybody else here on these streets suffer. The country is literally in dire straits because the majority of it is in darkness. From outer space, all you see is a glimmer of light. And it's called the freaking middle class of South Africa. And it is subjugating to the tyranny of its insensitivity everybody else that is living below the poverty line, having to walk 10,000 kilometers just to get to a bucket of water. These people of which, if they were to be given the same opportunities as you, would slay you in corporate in a second, would kick more butt than you in a presentation, would pass better in a math test than you, would literally run a business far well-oiled like a well-oiled machine than you ever could, but they can't fast enough get around to even getting their matric certificate. I have been thwarted from even graduating from WITS. You disenfranchised me and made me like those living below the poverty line in this country that don't even have a freaking ID. And you have therefore caused underestimation of my person by people who want to exploit me because I am obviously something gorgeous yet that is to be seen appropriately. Just like the gorgeous North Korean women that find themselves working prostitution jobs in Beijing, China, I am facing the risk of doing things that are entirely inappropriate for me in some funny space where now that I have defected, I have not, however, successfully defected into the right space like South Korea. I gotta eat, and so to eat, I will do anything. That is what South Africa is doing to me right now. I obviously have to get out of here. But those who see my value, some of them are not of pure heart, and some of them are not of pure mind. And I am a gorgeous woman. I believe that the woman whose video I attached to my video or whose link I put in the description, I stand corrected. I will only find out once I do the edits how it is that I'm going to be able to show you this chick from North Korea. It's so gorgeous. She is currently staying in the United States. Her defection happened first in South Korea, and then she was able to move to the US. And in the US now, she's got this beautiful apartment. She's got this independent life. She's got a very successful channel on YouTube. Its main directionality is to teach people about North Korea and the ridiculous things that happen there. She's been very well embraced by the American community, the world community at large, including me. I believe I have even subscribed to her channel. That woman started out in North Korea, right? In South Korea. She even joined that South Korean show where they keep on dissing the North Korean regime and they talk about the experience and whatnot. And then she was successfully able to move to the United States and has quite a culture shock from being there, but she's nonetheless comfortable and safe. And as gorgeous as she is, I would imagine she probably, on the daily, just when she goes to the store to buy some juice, probably gets like 5 or 10 guys trying to holler at her. Like, she's probably so sought after, like a gem. She's exotic in the US right now. She is this gorgeous Asian girl with this accent as well when she speaks. So it's not American. It's like English spoken with like a North Korean touch to it. Like the language that they speak there, I don't know what it is, right? And her foreign state makes her like this exotic, dreamy thing amidst American men, be they black, white, in and of themselves, Asian, purple, pink, whatever, Indian, wherever it is that she might find herself in the US, she is probably being looked at by men on some, oh my goodness. And then when she opens her mouth and speaks, they also like, oh, where you from? They probably just like drool over her. I could just imagine the woman in the grocery store and how much a whole bunch of guys probably drop their groceries just like struggling to like pick up their jaws from the ground the way that she's so gorgeous. Yet there was a time, at least up until the age of about I think 15 or 16, before she escaped North Korea. I mean, she has a level of beauty that could have probably got her kidnapped into Kim Jong-un's pleasure squad. Like, there are so many issues in North Korea. I can't cover them all right now, otherwise my video is going to be longer than it already is. But she's got that level of beauty where, my goodness, like, yeah. And she's now in the US, and I imagine that now everybody's just like literally trying to like holler at this girl, right? But when she was in North Korea, nobody was looking at her like that. She was being disregarded. She couldn't do what she wanted with her life. She couldn't even dream. She could not see herself traveling the world, let alone living in the United States. She could not see any of that. She looked probably at herself and could not even recognize somebody gorgeous, dreamy, and beautiful. North Korean women are subjugated to the tyranny of abusive men who, frustrated by the regime themselves, beat them up. They cannot go to the police and say, there's a domestic violence case here. Please deal with this dude who's out here busy scratching me. They have to deal with abuse. So kids grow up there with dads beating moms, and it's normal. They come back drunk, having drunk whatever it is that they can make from the ground, and then they beat women up. They don't have proper jobs, they're frustrated, and so they beat women up. Like, there's a real problem with domestic violence in North Korea. She therefore would have likely ended up with a man, given her own class group, that would have also beaten her up, but she would have also taken it in her stride. So the gender-based violence in North Korea is similar to the gender-based violence in South Africa. Whereas women, we have to take in our stride some of the most ridiculous men just because it's the way it is. We have to accept that when I grow up, I'm going to be beaten up just like my mom. When I grow up, I'm going to be unloved and mistreated just like my mom. South Africa, because it is a country that is participating in world events and the world social economy, is therefore able to make itself on world statistic books. The stats of North Korea are barely known because Kim Jong-un is super secretive. So we don't know where it stands in terms of its femicide rate. We don't know where it stands in terms of its domestic violence rate. We don't know where it stands in terms of its murder rate because we literally no information is coming out of North Korea in order for us to be able to figure out what's actually going on there. We don't know what its suicide rate looks like either. It might even be number 1 in the world, but we can never know because it's a pariah state, it's alone, it's quiet, its stats don't get communicated to the world. But right now, South Africa, because you do participate in world events and because you are involved in world, what do you call this, ecosystem like developments, yours are stats that do get tabulated. And so you look on paper bad already, and yet you still got attitude. Is that basic? You are the number 1 most horrific country to live in, according to world statistics, as a woman. You are also with the highest failure rate for small to medium enterprises. You have got the 2nd highest suicide rate in the world, second to no one but Russia. And your government is among the most corrupt in the world. Your economy is performing more poorly than poorer countries than it. And your people are the most unequal in the world in terms of how they look at each other. It is the most unequal society in the world. Those are the stats of South Africa. Guess what you look like, randos? North Korea. It's just that North Korean statistics are not being given us because Kim Jong-un is officially a pariah. And so therefore, you don't look as bad as North Korea. But North Korea also has a very high rate of gender-based violence. It's not very good to be a woman there. It's so bad that women can't even wear lipstick or they wear any part of their hair. It can't be worn any particular way. They're forced to wear certain kind of clothes. They cannot speak their minds. They can't speak out against their governments. They can't work the jobs they want to. They can't dream. That is my life currently in this country. I ain't being told where to go, what to do. I'm also working in a labor camp, a concentration camp where 24 freaking hours a day, I gotta work for free, unable to earn a living, unable to go despite being a genius intellectually, study. I can't get my PhD. I can't even get my undergraduate degree. Even though if I was enabled to, I would likely pass better than most of you. I would also, if I was enabled to work, likely be more successful than most of you because I've got that Steve Jobs mind. But I'm sitting, languishing in a country that is filthy, wholeheartedly dirty, and it is making little children as young as 4 work in labor camps. That is South Africa. And so because South Africa is as bad as it is, it just needs not to be communicated to the world that it's basically the tantamount of North Korea. And my job is to make that clear to the rest of the world. I want the world to know that South Africa is and ought be a pariah state because they act totalitarian, and the only person that gain any benefit at all from a wicked regime are those that are Kim Jong-un's butt kissers. You're literally proliferating the agenda of a president that does not care about his people. You are proliferating the agenda of a government that does not care about its people. You are proliferating a classism within your elite groups over there that take bread out of the mouths of infant babies if they're born to the wrong class of women and men. You are leaving women suffocating under abusive men, and you are disregarding your own laws. And just like North Korea's Kim Jong-un, you want to give yourselves a better reputation out there in the world than you truly actually do have. But goodness gracious, those who visit North Korea know that something's wrong. There's only one little glimmer of light from outer space. The United Nations is aware that you're abusive, but you're in denial. And anyone at all that goes and visits North Korea knows that there's something wrong. Because they always have to be taken in there through a tour guide. Not only do they have to be taken in there through a tour guide, they can only go to 1 or 2 places, Pyongyang. If you go to the North Korea, the only airport there, Pyongyang Airport, it is a ghost airport. Where have you ever seen a ghost airport? However, if you look on the inside, it's so beautiful. It's just like North Korean women. A gorgeous, beautiful airport that's barely frequented, however, barely desired, barely wanted, barely making money, barely doing what it ought to do. Given that it is an airport, it should be bustling with international bodies. It's nonetheless mostly empty and unfrequented, except for by a few tourists who here and there come in there and record and say, this is kind of eerie, it's creepy. I'm in an airport and there's no one in sight. I am a woman that is being looked at by 1 or 2 or 3 people in the international community. And what they see is Pyongyang Airport. They see a gorgeous ecosystem, a beautiful landscape, something that is actually of world standard, world class. But my goodness, it's so empty and it's eerie and it's freaky. I am a tourist destination. I am a strangely disregarded woman. I'm living in a ghost town because my country's wicked. So is Pyongyang Airport low class, lackluster? Is its 1-star airline actually really 1 star? Or is it only being graded 1 star because it belongs to North Korea? That's what happens when people that are of high quality live in a country that is oppressive of their rights. They get graded with 1 star when they could actually be 5 star. And their things are barely frequented, even though they're of world-class standards. I have got high-quality content that I upload on YouTube almost every single day. And yet, barely anybody peruses me, except for 1 or 2 or 5 people. And these people come in, and there's a tumbleweed rolling around a very beautiful airport. And they are then tempted to underestimate that I'm actually worth anybody's while. Even the world's only 1-class airline, that's what it is that Pyongyang Airlines, I think, is called. North Korean Airlines, I don't know what the airline is called, but that particular airline is the world's only 1-star airline. It's been that badly graded. However, the people who use that airline in and of themselves say, I don't know why it's 1 star. It wasn't actually that bad. I don't know why it's 1 star. It was not actually that bad. It's only 1 star because of where it is. It's because of Kim Jong-un that his airline, the only airline in his country, is 1 star. It's because of the leadership, not only the leadership, but also that middle class that disregards everybody else. That situation has caused a country that could have so much better to offer the world to frankly not be able to do so. It can't, it literally cannot look better. How in the world do you grade with 2 or 3 or 5 stars at the airline of a country that oppresses people's liberties, does not allow them? I mean, goodness, people can't even drive in North Korea. To get a driver's license, you have to know how to disassemble a car and put it back together again. They make it impossible for people to do basic things. Basic things. So how in the world are you going to bless a country like that with 2 or 3 or 4 stars? How in the world, when tourists have to be chaperoned by tour guides everywhere they go, they can't just check a country out on their own because they don't want them going to certain places, certain regions. They can't talk to certain locals. You can't do anything in North Korea without a tour guide. From the moment you get out of your hotel room, somebody's going to be walking you everywhere you go because you cannot just do what you want to do there. So in a nation like that, everything that comes out of it is always going to be 1 star. But is it really 1 star? That's just the thing. There is more to this than meets the eye, okay? You do not get to grade a person 1 star because they just so happen to belong to a government. That's freaking ridiculous. I am a South African citizen. And South Africa is much like North Korea. I've essentially been de-ID'd. Me having an identification number in this country is irrelevant because I might as well be dead. I might as well be registered at the very Home Affairs as deceased. I might as well have a death certificate hovering around me because South Africa, the middle class in this country, has seen it fit to disenfranchise the crap out of me until I look like somebody that never even wrote matric. And yet I've got the level of beauty that if I were to be suddenly dropped off in the US, suddenly dropped off in, the UK, Australia, any other country in the world, Brazil, I would be a freaking exotic export. The men there would find me salivatingly gorgeous. And when I speak, they'd be like, my goodness, your accent, where are you from? I would be an exotic flower in a different location that is now all of a sudden thriving because the environmental conditions are good for that country, for that particular plant. And all of a sudden, where it is that the men in this country disregarded me, ignored me, or even tried to make me part of Kim Jong-un's pleasure squad, or worse, try to make me a phone call, sex talking slave thing in Beijing, China. They would regret having done that to me. The men of my own country are trying to put me in the pleasure squad of some filthy, powerful men. And the men in neighboring countries that are pro-misogyny, pro-squelching of women's general agenda are happy that I should go and pick up calls and talk about pleasuring men's nether regions. Make me into a little prostitute that's busy phone sexing some complete strangers. Unless I find my way to a South Korea tantamount, I will never, just like that North Korean defector girl, be seen rightly for who I am. I'm not a reject. I just so happen to be born in a filthy country that has no regard for the human rights of most of its citizens. Therefore, my glory, my beauty, my intelligence, and the grander scale of what it is that I have to offer is given a 1-star rating. I am like Pyongyang Airport. I am a world-class environment in a dingy country with dingy laws and dingy middle class that are freaking elitist that have taken most of the country and left them in absolute squalor. I am like a beautiful North Korean defector girl that suddenly gets salivated after in a different country because she succeeded to run. So anyone at all that wants to look at me like I am some kind of a reject that nobody wants, no, don't make a mistake. I'm gorgeous. Don't make a mistake. I'm intelligent. Don't make a mistake. I have a passion and a purpose. And don't make a mistake, I am highly sought after. I just so happen to have been born in the wrong damn country. And so for those reasons, none of these niggas be looking at me right. For those reasons, none of these randoms left and right be trying to do a right thing with me. They want to reduce me to a whore, a prostitute, somebody that is after the money of some fool. Someone that is happy to go and spread her legs for some totalitarian, megalomaniacal, random douchebag. And if I try to flee to his next door neighbor, I might then end up being a sex calling person. Do not mistake my condition, therefore, facing those as a risk, as a woman that's not of high value and could be wanted by a whole bunch of men that are literally tripping one another just to get at me. Do not imagine me as a woman that's not that. I know who I am and what I'm about. I came to Christ in 2011. Having had a history of being Miss Popularity, highly wanted. So nobody gets to call me a reject. Nobody gets to imagine me a 1-star airline or Pyongyang Airport because it's ill-frequented is then like some dingy thing. No. I just need to be uprooted from North Korea and put somewhere else. And then you will see just how much these randos will salivate and grovel after me and struggle to take in their stride when I reject them. And when I reject them and then say, no, I'm sorry, not quite, I can't do that, but hey, thanks for trying. I trip men, okay? I will cause traffic to stop and for people to freaking honk at me just by walking the street. I just need to leave South Africa. It's what you must understand. So South Africans, I am preaching against you because the world needs to realize that you are North Korea. And anyone else at all that looks at me from a distance, make not the mistake of anticipating me truly 1-star purely because the world has graded me 1-star. It's only because of where I find myself. Take my airline to another country and watch it suddenly get bolstered to 4 or 5-star status. Let us just get that stuff out of the room. I am not a reject. And I'm also not desperate. I just need to successfully defect from the North Korean tantamount of the South African wicked climate, the South African freaking middle class, the South African defeatist body, the South African economic calamity, whatever you want to call this thing. I just need to defect from it. And I need to defect into a space that's going to re-civilize me. An environment that's going to care for the trauma in my heart. An environment that is going to take heed of the challenges I am facing emotionally. An environment that is similar to South Korea. Somewhere where I will be given an ID. And from there, I can travel wherever in the world I want to go. I'm leaving South Africa. But anyone else at all that is not in this country, do not mistake my 1-star status for that being which I actually truly am. I'm a daughter of God. I'm high value. I'm high quality. Many women have done excellently, but she surpasses them all. Give her praise where it is due. That is what the Bible has to say. No one gets to call me a freaking reject, okay? It's that basic. That said, I'm commencing a fast today. I believe actually I might even be past the time when I'm fasting. I think it might be already 6 p.m. because as you can see, the sun is setting in the background. I'm going on a 7-day fast to conquer stuff like that. I spoke at length right now. This which I'm speaking to get to the point that I'm making now. I am fasting for the next 7 days from 6 to 6. Not eating anything except liquids. I'm just drinking liquids during the day. And then I'll eat dinner or whatever in the evenings. So I can get out of South Africa, literally. I am fasting to leave North Korea. I am fasting to leave North Korea so my value can be seen. I want to move out of this environment. I want to leave my mother with pie on her face. I want to leave my sister. My little sister came today with some friend of hers. Everybody underestimates me. And all I could think about was, I wonder what this friend thinks I am. In South Africa, it doesn't matter if you're pretty, if you're beautiful, if you look a certain way. Insofar as you don't fall within a certain socioeconomic group, you are worthless. Entirely worthless. So I find no comfort even in the fact that I'm still pretty. And what's worse is that I'm freaking 37. I'm not that young anymore. And so that which makes a woman valuable in the eyes of a fallen carnal society is even fleeing from me. I'm getting to an age where guys are going to basically be unmoved even when I complain. That, how do you do this to me? To them, it's like I'm like Australia. It's down there, but who cares? Like proper. So I need to get out of here at the speed of lightning. I have a biological clock that is ticking. I have children to make and a man to marry. I have stuff to do, but I will never be able to commence any of that if I don't get out of South Africa. It literally is exactly the same as North Korea. The ridiculousness that I just described to you in North Korea is happening in my life. And it is a reality. You have seen it. I have recorded it for years. But even a little bit that you've seen with that which I've been sharing ever since coming back from the darkness, ever since coming back from hunkering down and being underground, is evidence in this Africa. It's like things here, gushubile. It's bad. It's really bad. And so I'm fasting for the next 7 days to be freed from the futility of people's minds to think I'm one star. And also to get out of here. Like I need to move out. I need to get my own apartment. And from there, I need South Korea. South Korea is a tantamount of me having my own apartment from where I can re-civilize myself, live among a people that don't underestimate who I am, have neighbors that greet me without thinking I stank. And then from there, I can see about getting a passport. See about getting myself out from South Korea since I've got freedoms now within a country to move anywhere else in the world. I am fasting and seeking God's face to help me move from Barbara's house to service my car. I want to renew my driver's license, my license disc, service my vehicle, and get an apartment. I've already got furniture. I just need to get an apartment and move away from all of these underestimating forces where I feel like I'm a child and just absolutely nobody groveling just to come up for air. I need to go somewhere where there's 24-hour electricity as opposed to some small little glimmering light for 2 seconds a day where I'm forced to sleep by 7 p.m. at night. I need my independence back, at least from living amidst these monsters. I need an environment or a space in the background that's beautiful for me to record my video so my channel can grow. I need to get to a minimum place where it would be feasible to even start thinking about applying for a passport so I can get out of South Africa. Period. I need the bridge, the gap. I need the South Korea tantamount. And that is what I am now fasting for the next 10 days that are coming. I hope you've been edified in the name of Jesus Christ. But yeah, that was what I wanted to get off my chest. I'm not a reject. I'm just in the wrong context. Like, get that. Cranky. Peace.